And as we continue to see COVID-19 cases in the return to learn, we're checking in with the Centralia R-VI school district to see how they are handling in-person classes. This morning we are joined by the district superintendent, Dr. Stephen Chancellor. Thank you so much for being on with us this morning.
Oh, thank you. Good morning.
So first, you told us that 2 people have tested positive so far this school year in your district, with 30 close contacts for the first case and 17 close contacts identified in the currently active case. Can you talk about how each of those cases managed to have that many close contacts?
Absolutely, and I have to say I'm actually very happy with those numbers. Our 2 cases came from our middle and our high schools, where, as you can imagine, those are the hardest schools to create stable groups and to limit student interactions. So, to add to it, one of our positive cases is a bus rider. So, on the surface, it had the potential to cut a very wide path. But the reason I'm happy with those numbers is because our procedures did their job. We have accurate records of where our students sit every day, and including where on buses, and we avoid large exposures by doing things like eating meals in our classrooms and masking when we move. So the only thing our procedures couldn't do was make that news easier to hear by our students and our families, and they naturally were disappointed, but I can't praise our families enough because they've been phenomenal in this process.
Yeah, I'm sure. And is social distancing feasible in your district right now?
Yeah, I mean it's obviously a challenge. We have very old school buildings, but we do our best. We obviously are masking in situations where we can't be more than 6 feet apart. But again, our ability to just do our jobs when we are seated, simple things like the direction of our desk, the way we move about the classroom, have all helped to as much as they can.
I'm sure. And when students or staff do have to quarantine, are they able to continue learning or teaching? How does that work?
Sure, you can't see me knocking on wood right now. We have yet to have a teacher quarantine since schools reopened. We've had a couple self-isolate for precautionary reasons, and in those cases, we were able to use substitutes to cover. And we do have systems in place for teachers to continue teaching if they do fall into an extended quarantine. And the same is true for our students. So we've been utilizing Google Classroom to deliver content and materials, and almost all of our teachers are doing this every single day. So our thinking from day one was, let's build that comfort level with our teachers and with our students so that no matter how many have to quarantine or the length of time, we would be prepared to not lose any momentum.
Have you had any issues with compliance of COVID-19 safety measures, or are there discipline measures in place to enforce compliance?
Yeah, so again, we've been very fortunate. We've had no issues. And I would say that our entire community has shown a very high awareness for the greater good. Our families, as I've mentioned, have been phenomenal to work with. They communicate very well with us, and I can't tell you how many times they choose to act out of caution because they just don't want to put the district in any kind of risk or jeopardy. So our students have mimicked this. They have different reasons for staying in tune with our procedures, whether it's to make sure that they can participate in activities or they don't want to miss out on a class project. And just to be frank, some people just don't want to be told to stay home. So our students get a tremendous amount of credit for doing their jobs while they're with us, and we are very proud of them for doing so.
Last week, your district actually announced your homecoming football game would be at South Shelby so that there isn't a need to adhere to Boone County limits on attendance. Can you explain that decision?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. I was hoping to address this. This decision in no way is our attempt to defy or show up the health department. Every week we submit waiver requests and event plans, and we've communicated very well with them since this thing started in the spring. And our home football games have been approved to have up to 300 people in attendance. And on the surface, that seems easy, but in reality, it takes the entire week to prepare for, and we expend a tremendous amount of energy and resources on that event. And that's an entire week with our attention diverted away from what our core business and what our core purpose is, which is learning. And as much as our community loves watching our kids compete, they take more pride in us offering a quality education. So in our eyes, the move was simple. We've been traveling for away games already. This is just another away game. And there's still rules to follow. We still expect our students to take the same precautions we ask from them every day. We still need our spectators to fulfill their roles and responsibilities. And do we wish we could pack our house and do the traditions and the rituals? Absolutely. But I'll continue to make this point. Our community and our students understand the give and take of our world right now, and our home doesn't change no matter where we play.
Definitely. And you've said you've been in contact with the health department. Has the school district received any feedback from the health department about the plans to go to South Shelby?
Sure. I had a conversation with a member of the department this week, and they know what our intentions are. They know the pride we take in hosting all kinds of events and doing so safely. And I would describe our thinking and our relationship as being very congruent. So obviously there's a variety of versions about this floating around, and it was important that we talk directly and that we maintain that relationship that up until today has been built on us being honest and collaborating closely.
And is Centralia concerned about the possibility of bringing COVID-19 from South Shelby back to Boone County? Are there measures in place to prevent that from happening this week?
Right. No, we're not concerned, but that doesn't give us permission to let our guard down. We're in the middle of week 6, and we've made it this far because we have exercised good judgment and we have good procedures to limit our exposure. And I'd say on top of that, South Shelby isn't a lawless place. They have things in place that we will need to adhere to. And the truth is we have about 1,400 students, and every night and weekend, they and their families are somewhere doing something. And I have to have some level of faith and trust that they're making good choices and they're taking precautions to protect themselves. And that faith and that trust got us here today. So we know our case count may go up and our contacts may increase, but that can happen anytime and anywhere. And if and when it does, we'll deal with it calmly and we'll work through the problem.
And with homecoming week coming up next week, how will the week look a little bit different than in years past?
Sure, you're going to see what you've been seeing the last 6 months, which is new and creative ideas. And necessity is the mother of all inventions. And our student council has been working hard to deliver that kind of homecoming atmosphere. So you'll see decorating competitions and dress-up days and a homecoming court, but all of them are going to have their own kind of COVID flair. The feeling that I think will resonate all week is that homecoming isn't necessarily what we do. It's going to be wrapped around who we are. So
that's awesome to hear. And will there be any guidelines in place at South Shelby that fans and students should know about before they head to that football game next Friday?
Sure. We generally get the home team guidelines and restrictions about midweek. So I'm sure we're going to be getting those from South Shelby soon. And when we travel, we use email and the Remind app to communicate that to our spectators about what the expectations would be. So without seeing their specific guidelines, I think it's safe to expect that our spectators will have recommendations on face coverings and social distancing for sure.
All right, awesome there. And turning back now to the classrooms, have there been any issues in the availability of substitute teachers? Are there any extra guidelines in place to have them in classes as well?
Sure. I've been careful this morning not to jinx myself with my responses. We've been fortunate to not have a major problem yet. And with that said, we know that probably isn't sustainable. We do have a small group of loyal substitutes we turn to in our time of need. And as long as they feel comfortable being in our schools, we're comfortable with them working. We obviously have modifications in place to limit their interactions and really reduce the risk and circumstances to everyone. But I think we're all aware that at some point in time, we may need to get creative with grouping, and we've been operating from a place of flexibility and adaptability this whole time, and I only see that continuing.
And speaking of that flexibility, at what point, if any, would the district consider returning to online classes? Are there any specific metrics you're using to monitor that situation?
Yeah, and I know that's common to see, but we're not binding ourselves to one particular metric or one particular decision tool. I worry that doing so backs us into a corner and forces a decision we may not like. But we are paying attention to system metrics like student attendance and teacher attendance and how those factors contribute to learning. And we believe very strongly that the most desirable education is one obtained through seated instruction with a teacher that has relationships with students. And again, that doesn't give us permission to be reckless, but our families are committed to do their part at home to get their kids to school. So we're going to proceed by doing everything we can to keep them there. I have a lot of confidence in our leadership structure of our organization. It does rely on data, but it's also very rooted in calm and common sense decision making. So if circumstances dictate our move to online, it'll be thoughtful, and the why and the how will be communicated very clearly.
All right, unfortunately, that is all the time we have this morning. Thank you so much for being on with us again this morning, Dr. Chancellor.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.